This is the Seven Figure Standard Podcast, hosted by Arash Vossoughi and Mikey Stiller, with mindset and strategies to help you break through and create personal freedom.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Seven Figure Standard Podcast. I'm Mikey Stiller, joined by my co-host, Arash Vossoughi, and we're so thrilled to be back with you for another episode. You know, right now, if you're listening to this as it comes out, we're just a few days away from the midpoint of the year. And you can look back to January and see the goals that you set for this year and do a quick check-in of where you are and how you can make the next 6 months the best 6 months, not just of your year, but of your life. And Arash, I think that's a great kicking off point for us. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mikey. How are you?
I am doing great as well. I know you have a really awesome process and exercise for everyone to go through to make sure that the last 6 months of the year is their best 6 months ever. How do you do that?
Well, we want to look at it as let go of what you've done, but observe what you've done from a neutral place. These next 6 months, and you may think it's overstating, but I'm not overstating. I've done this several times, and I do this process every year, no different than when I start the year. And we want to commit, and that's a very important word to me, commit. Because let me say that before I finish my statement. We want to understand the importance of commitment. The universe responds to what we're most committed to on the deepest level, and the results always follow that. And let's say somebody's committed to procrastination. I'll have people come to me, I always procrastinate. That's what they're most committed to. That's where the results follow. Somebody will commit. I had a client yesterday tell me on one of our calls, I set a goal for 75 days that I was going to earn 100,000. In that 75 days, I said, what'd you earn? He said 100,000 because he was most committed to it. So whatever we're most committed to, the results always follow. Now, go back to what we were talking about. If we all commit at the deepest level, these next 6 months by December 31st is going to be the best 6 months of your life. That's exactly what's going to happen. So what I like to do is ask questions to myself.
Hold on, before you get into that, you made such a good point right there, because you have to make the decision that the next 6 months is going to be the best 6 months of your life. It's not just going to happen by chance. It's not just going to happen as you go about your day without making that decision.
And it cannot be a wish or a hope. The universe does not respond to wishing and hoping. It does not respond to partial commitments. It does not respond to, it'd be great if it happened, but I told everybody on the podcast, I had a huge epiphany several weeks ago that I said, the biggest thing holding us back is we're protecting ourselves from who we want to be. And so if you look under the hood of that, what is that? That's what we're most resistant to. Well, that's a commitment on an unconscious level. Most people's deepest commitments are not consciously, they're unconsciously. However, we can consciously deepen what we want as a commitment on a subconscious level. And that's what we're talking about here. I think this is very important to do. A lot of people get into the summer and they start coasting. That's somebody, I want you to take vacations. I want you to enjoy your life. I want you to enjoy your experiences. But use that vacation time for it. Don't take off the whole summer. Don't take your foot off the gas. These next 6 months is going to determine what you're going to create in 2025 and beyond. And so, we want to ask really good questions. So the better the question, the more empowering the question, the more empowering the answer. Too many of us are not asking questions regularly enough. And if we are, we're asking disempowering questions. What's a disempowering question? How am I going to do it? There's no juice there. Let's ask a different question. If 2024 ends up being the best year of my life, what are the 3 things that I did for the last 6 months that made that so? Now, that's a great question. And that's a question I'm going to start you with. The way I want you to listen to this podcast is I just want you to listen to me right now. But then I want you to go back and spend time when I'm asking the questions to get out a journal and really write out your answers. And if you don't, you're not going to get the benefit of this. If you do, you're going to create the next 6 months as the best 6 months.
Arash,
So-
can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
As you're asking yourself these questions and coming up with the answer, are you getting into the mindset of your future self, of the goal fulfilled, to ask the question and find the answer?
Always. Everything you do is from your future self. See, we've got to shatter our present self. Our present self is coming from our old programming. And so that's a good question. So I'll ask a different question right now so you make sure you understand this. Before you start this process, I want you to observe over the last 2 weeks, what has my daily behaviors been? That is showing you your true belief system. And your choices always reveal to you your most dominant programs. So take a look at that. But at this point, I want the assumption that everything we do is we're coming from our goal. We're coming from our future self. See, the biggest journey of excellence, the biggest journey of freedom is detaching from our present self. Now, that is a difficult journey because a lot of times you'll default to your present self and you don't even know it. But the more aware you become with the processes that I've already taught you, with your every 3 hours accepting and rejecting, with your morning routine, the more aware you're going to become. So think about this. I was telling Mikey this yesterday, in fact. I said, do you realize if somebody understood the power of writing out their goals, what it really does? When we write out our goals, we're training our consciousness of how we're going to live in the future. But we're not just training our consciousness, we're deepening our commitment every day of rewriting the goal. But that's not all we're doing. We're becoming more aware of how to think. We automatically start thinking because the repetition takes root in our subjective mind. And that's the power of that. That's why writing is so powerful. If I told you there's one exercise that will deepen your commitment more than any other exercise, it would be writing your goal out. Even if you don't believe it, it deepens your commitment. So we want to get in the habit of doing that every day. Like my goal statement is about 5 lines. I create a goal with my self-image in there. And so it takes me about 5 minutes to write out my goal. But that is a very important 5 minutes. And this is where we talk about quality. 5 minutes of quality compounded by the next 6 months. Get ready. You're going to be happy of how the outside world shapes itself.
Arash, this is so good. So they've answered the first question. What's next?
The second question. What have been my greatest 3 growth points since January 1st? Like, where have I grown the most since January 1st? And then the reason we ask this question is we want to measure the good we've done, where we've come from. Now we're working with not looking at what's missing, not looking, oh God, I didn't do it. Everyone's done something good.
When you answer this question, are you looking at attributes? Are you looking at habits? Or are you looking at results? Are you saying like, you know what, over the last 6 months, I've absolutely killed it with my attitude and my standard? Or are you saying over the last 6 months, I hit this short-term goal and this short-term goal?
I don't look at it any way. I look at whatever comes up in my mind.
Okay. So there's no right or wrong.
This is how I answer these questions because I want to get the answers from my subconscious. So you do automatic writing, whatever comes up. It's not critical thinking here. It's automatic so you can start opening up your creativity. I don't want the answers coming from my programming. I want the real answers. Whatever we feel emotional is the real part of us, not intellectual. So we've got to ask that. Let's say somebody, like we have a great client, right? She got into Lux magazine. So that would be an automatic for her. If she's listening to this, I guarantee right away that was the first thing that popped in her mind, So whatever pops in your mind is the real truth for you. But a lot of people will judge it. If they don't have a good self-esteem, they'll judge and say, I haven't done anything. No, everybody's done something well. Everybody's done something well. And whatever it is, I want you to write it down.
That's a good thing to look at too, because if nothing comes to mind right away, you're probably being far too hard on yourself.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what it is. So let's look at the next question. Where am I winning and why am I winning? And I want you to put a list of these answers. So where am I winning? I'm a great father. I'm a great leader. I am a really good friend. And then ask yourself why, because if you could do it in that area, you could do it in every area. Because how we do one thing is how we do everything if we put the same amount of energy and attention on it. So I don't just like asking, where am I winning? I like asking the why. Why am I winning in that area? And that's going to open you up.
Okay, keep going.
All right, now we're going to get to the real questions. Where are my top 3 business challenges? And how can I turn those into opportunities? Now, we'd be remiss if we just talked about business, because our business is a direct reflection of us. And you could be in a job, but you're still the CEO of your position. So I always want you to think like you're the business owner. That's the best way to think about it if you're in a job. Now,
say that one more time. You're the CEO of your position. That is such a good mindset to have.
I remember I was in the corporate world. I used to do business to business sales. And I started listening. I learned that from Jim Rohn. And he said, if you're not the CEO of your business, even if you're in a job, you're never going to have a business if you want a business. And I was like, oh my God, that's how I started thinking. How I always talk about your philosophy is so important because it's your underlying belief system. My philosophy in that area changed right away. It made a huge difference on me. It made a huge impact. And so if you're in a job right now, I want you to think that you're the CEO of that position, like it's your business, that job. So it's very important to do.
Okay, so that question that you just asked, you want them to ask
one more.
Okay.
One more. There's a second part. The question I asked was, what are your top 3 business challenges and how can you turn those into opportunities? Now, the second part of the question is, what are your top 3 personal challenges and how can you turn those into opportunities?
Exactly what I was going to ask you to clarify.
Yeah.
Okay, so once I've got that, is there more?
Okay. The next question is, what is the main frustration in my life and what is the solution? There's always an answer. You ask a question, you get the answer right away.
This one's interesting because we get questions about this quite a bit whenever we do Q&A sessions. We often do Q&As. Well, you're doing one coming up on YouTube, but we also do them at the live events that we do. And a lot of times whenever someone has a challenge, they think that it's out of their control. Will you talk about that? Reframing it?
Well, first of all, we're responsible for everything in our life. So once we understand that, normally if we have a challenge, we had something to do with it. Like I had something to do with it. The other part of this is interesting. A lot of people will be like, oh, this is positive. I don't want to look at frustrations. No, you got to do the real work. You just do it neutrally. You're not attached to it, but you've got to do the real work so you can get the real answer. Like I get frustrated at times. And I always joke, like my greatest frustration is the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, like that's the only thing that gets me emotionally triggered, but you'll have times in your business that you get frustrated. But what I will tell you is you want to look at it from a neutral place. And if I can give you one idea that will dramatically change your wealth, your identity, is as soon as you get a frustration, ask yourself, what is the solution? Instead of staying in the frustration. But I want everyone to identify what is the greatest frustration. Now, for somebody could be killing it in business right now, but they're very overweight and it just bugs them. That would be the frustration. Or somebody may be like, I'm frustrated that I let my ego get in the way. And when I do good, I start drinking my own Kool-Aid. I start, getting too arrogant. That could be a frustration for somebody. I can't control it. So what we want to do is identify that and ask ourselves what the solution is.
So good. Okay, keep going for the next one.
What am I most attached to? What am I holding on to the most? Is it my results? Is it that frustration that we just identified? I want you to release it. I want you to accept the opposite idea right away. Whatever that is, accept the opposite idea. Now, the next question is a great question, and I'm going to tell you how to use it. Is what are your superpowers that you believe in better than anything else? Maybe for somebody, it's communication. Maybe for somebody, it's just really knowing how to make other people feel good. There'll be a list of your superpowers. Now we want to turn it into your team. I call it your dream team. This is like your dream team that you could go to at any time when you are stuck, when you want to go to that next gear, when you want to go to 5 gears greater and go, listen, all I have to rely on my automatic superpowers that God has gifted me, that I have developed. For somebody, it could be selling. For somebody, it's impact. So I want you to write a list and always have this as your dominant part of your identity that you go to when you're doing anything.
Are superpowers things that come naturally to you? Naturally.
They come naturally. You already have them naturally. They may have not have come naturally, but you built it where it's your automatic state.
Okay.
The interesting thing is we can make abundance our automatic state. It could be our natural state once we condition ourselves properly. Now, the next question is, what is my number one limiting belief that I want to shatter? What is that number one limiting belief that I want to shatter? And whatever this answer is, the next 90 days, you will shatter it if you install the opposite belief, the exact opposite. I say 90 days. I don't have the exact number on how long it takes. I've shattered limiting beliefs within a day. But to do it properly, you'll know when you shattered it because you never think from that again. And you'll know if you're never thinking from it, move on. But if you are, on average, I say 90 days, it takes 90 days to change a belief. Like I'm over exaggerating it. However, I'd rather, under promise you and over deliver with these questions than the opposite.
I love it whenever you talk about limiting beliefs too, and you have to ask yourself, is this true? Because so often it's not true. It's not real.
Well, we want to get in a habit of really looking at our beliefs, and that's the only thing you have to ask yourself, is it real? Or was it real from my 12-year-old self? Or was it real from my 21-year-old self? So it's not the limiting beliefs are never who you are right now. It's that version of you. Just like we have a future self, we have a past self. If you didn't heal the past, you're not going to experience it in the future. So it's a very good way to do it. Now, this is a great question. In the next 6 months, assuming the next 6 months, we've already accepted the idea it's going to be the best 6 months of your life. What one belief, what one skill set would make the most dramatic upgrade in your life? Just pick one belief and one skill set.
Yeah, this is so good. So what you recommended everyone do at the very beginning of the call was listen. Don't try to answer the questions now, listen, and then go back through and answer the questions. Once you have all these questions, how often are you reviewing them?
Every day. I want to make sure I'm congruent with it. It's always like mine are, obviously I've already answered these, and mine are already on my desk. So it's a reminder. It's a reminder. Am I being this? Am I being that?
Do your answers ever change?
Sometimes, because I get more aware. So I go bigger. But I've said this all week to our clients, the great paradox of life is you're never going to achieve what you want until you become what you want. See, I have a lot of people that I work with. All they do is look at results. They don't look inside and they say, no, I'm going to do this differently. And they think about the actions they're going to do differently, but they don't understand how the results are created. Results are a manifestation of our actions. Our action is a manifestation of our programming. So you have to do the whole gamut if you're going to create significant results. See, they're trying to change their results without changing their programming. It does not work. It will never work. You can't get better results if you don't change the programming. Like I'm very upfront about this. Any goal that like my goal that I have right now, like, do I know I'm going to achieve it? Absolutely. Do I have the confidence for it right now? No. If I had the confidence, it'd already be here. And I don't judge myself. I just keep building my identity up until I have the confidence. But you have to daily work on your programming, because what we're getting is what we're wired for. As we get wired at a higher level, we're going to see a higher level of results. So that's why it's very important.
Okay, so how do you take all of these answers and turn it into action so that the next 6 months is the best 6 months of your life?
Well, we got to review it. We got to go back and review it. So if we go back to the first question, what 3 things would have to happen to make it the best 6 months of your life? So I've got to consciously install those 3 things until they happen. Then I look for those to happen. That's really the effect. Now we go to the deeper questions. Okay, what are our business challenges and what are the solutions? So we start counteracting them and creating processes around them. Remember, the goal, the end of the year, you start there and you say, for me to achieve this, these are the processes I have to have. And that's why the processes are more important. You have to determine, what are my mindset processes going to be? What are my action processes going to be? What is my process around discipline? What is my process around leadership? Now we're talking about your approach to everything. Your approach is your automatic operating system. So we have an approach to this call. We have an approach to your sales numbers. We have an approach to prospecting. We have an approach to leadership. But your approach is your automatic operating system. That's your current approach. So another question we can ask is my current approach aligned with who I'm going to be in the next 6 months? If it's not, I've got to change that approach. So what do? We go back and we start installing the right approach. What is the right approach? The new belief. So that's how you have to start thinking. I'm teaching you how to think. See, a lot of people are not thinking in a certain way. They're thinking by default. I want you to think from my paradigm. I always say this, like, I had the greatest mentor in the world. I love him so much. I think about him often. And what I used to do, and I didn't know I was doing it. That's why we did a lesson on proximity is so important. Like, I stole his programming. And it's not like he wasn't giving it to me. He was giving it. I want to give you my programming. I want to give you my thinking patterns, because that is going to change the game. You could take somebody else you admire's program and make it yours. As you admire it, you emulate it. You emulate how they think. You emulate how they act. And that's how you're going to speed up the game.
All right, so correct me if I'm wrong, but right now, there's not just so many distractions available to us. There's so many distractions coming directly at us every single day. And so part of this exercise is keeping these answers in front of you so that you have your target right in front of you, and so that you're actively thinking, not going to autopilot, not going to your programming, but you're staying on track every single day.
I mean, I'll tell you what's going to happen. The minute they're done with this call, they're going to be like, whoa. And then they're going to go back to their day and go to their automatic programming. That's what everybody does, unless you consciously decide, you know what, like, no shit, no kidding. I'm going all in. I'm going all in because my commitments, the results always follow. But writing it is building it in your consciousness. And writing it, the more you start reviewing it, you become more and more aware of it, and you're going to think from that, and you're going to hold yourself to a higher standard. Just by doing this exercise, you're raising your standard. You're actually telling the world, I value myself. I really value myself. But I have one last question, and I want to ask it before you get going again, is write out a statement that it's December 31st, what your life looks like if it was impossible for you not to achieve what you wrote with your first questions. Write it out in a statement. I'm so happy and grateful now. It's December 31st, and I crushed the last 6 months. I have achieved X. My confidence has taken an exponential growth. My income has created the greatest quantum leap I've ever created in my life. And I now am creating success easily and effortlessly. Whatever I touch turns to gold, and 2025 is going to be even better. Like, that would be an example.
This is so good. This is probably my favorite podcast episode that we have done to date. If you're a longtime follower of the podcast, you know that we end every episode with an action set, but this entire episode was action-based. Is there anything else you want to add as far as how they need to approach this before we end today's call?
No, really take the time to do this. This is very important. And we want to start doing this on a regular basis. One thing that I said that I don't want you to miss, be very careful the type of questions you're asking yourself. A lot of people don't want to know the answer, but if you don't know the answer, you're suppressing. We want to know the answers. Empowering questions, empowering answers. Weak questions, weak answers. And I will tell everybody, now we're at the 6-month mark. If you want our help, let us help you. Set up a free strategy call, and I'll show you how to make the next 6 months the best 6 months. And Mike, you could tell them how to do that if you want.
Yes, send us an email, hello@vosscoachingco.com, and we will set up a free strategy session with you and one of our incredible coaches. Arash, you always say one call can change your life. One call changed my life. And I love it when you say that because it truly, there's so much value to doing a call with a coach and letting them talk to you and see where you're at and what you need to do to move forward.
Yeah, one call changed the whole trajectory of my life. I don't know where I'd be. And I was in a very dark place at that time, but I saw myself so much bigger. I knew I could do more. I just didn't know how. So I think mentorship is the biggest cheat code. Like I could look back at my life. Like we have mentors and there's a reason. I'll never not have a mentor. But the interesting phenomenon is we've been raised with this program that will invest in shoes, will invest in watches, will invest in purses, will invest in clothes, will invest in vacations, but we won't invest in ourselves. It's a big mistake. It's a big error people make.
Absolutely agree. All right. Thanks so much for joining us for today's podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a rating and review. And like I said before, you can send us an email, hello@vosscoachingco.com, and we'll get you scheduled for a free strategy session. And we'll see you next week for another episode of the 7-Figure Standard podcast. Thanks, Arash.
Thanks, Mikey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of 7-Figure Standard. We hope you found the insights and strategies helpful on your journey to success. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform to help us reach more people like you. To learn more about Arash and Mikey and how Voss Coach & Co. can help you achieve your goals and reach new levels of success, visit vosscoachingco.com. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of 7-Figure Standard.